Hmm. And ta-da. Okay, I'm going to take a quick moment to make it so it's possible for me to see this. Okay. There we go. Now I can see when comments happen. Okay. Only now. Okay. This is just a little bit more finicking us to sort out here. Just see comments and also, there we go. A lot of this is just a matter of getting familiar with some technical mastery here. I'm feeling a lot of electricity in my lower chest today. It's day 84 of 100. A lot of electricity in my lower chest, and it extends out into my forearms and into my hands. Kind of vitality and readiness. I felt really activated the last day and a half-ish. So some of the remnants in my body are still there. Part of what I'm grappling with right now is holding multiple energies at the same time. There's this whole art form of when feeling energies and feeling the same kind of thing of, oh, does the genre of music sense like, oh, okay, this feels like rock. It's kind of strange when they're using a violin for it. It's like violin rock, and you can feel like Lindsey Sterling, the way that she'll play violin like a fiddle and somehow makes it sound like rock, and then we'll put some context in it. Even though the violin is a classical instrument, that kind of the way that it's done clearly conveys the feeling of something like rock. And how that's different from jazz, and how that's different from classical, how it's different from hip hop music. So the resonance level where that's felt, the kind of subtlety, feeling that, the subtle level, the energy level, noticing that when I want to bring something into the world, when I want to affect what the world is doing, my mind's getting in the way. What I'm alive to right now, there are 3, 4, I think for the sake of simplicity, I'll say, well, 3 or 4, depending on how you want to count them, different frequencies that I'm currently really alive to. One is this one that I've mentioned in previous videos, the eternal. This is where I anchor. Precise, clean, still. The ringing of the silent bell. Everything comes from that being anchored. So that feeling is one that rings through my body. sort of like, it's my mind interjecting. A good teacher is going to put in an example, a clarifying thing here. Throughout, particularly this video, you may find that you have an easier time following because of the way that I'm placing my attention, the work that I'm doing inside. You're going to find it easier to follow if instead of assuming I'm going to say something logical and that you're going to follow the logic, if instead you feel into what I am ringing with. If you just feel into it, you feel your body. And ideally, if you feel more subtle than the body, the level at which you feel emotions and vibes, level of a kind of deeper subtlety, energy. Right? If you pay attention to that level and the way that it feels in you as I speak, what I have to say will be a lot clearer. Then you can come up with theories later, but the senses first. So there is the eternal. And that's one of them. Second one is this frequency I've been playing with, embodying more and more. The frequency of this program that's coming, what I'm calling Mage. This is about the interplay, the sort of dance. It's more textured, fluid, and there's a livedness to it. The anchor is still the eternal. It's like the eternal turned into whispers. It's not quite silent anymore, but it's instead of fluid, moving, textured flavor, an exploration of how does this work? How do I touch it? Not as made of thought, but as the mind being one of the things that is textured and felt. Development of the senses and a recognition of the way in which the development of the senses makes everything clear. And through that, a ring of a very particular type of power, the way that a bell ringing, the ringing sound conveys a kind of power in the way that it has you go, that's a bell, clear. So it's a different frequency, a different feeling. Ringing that in my body as well. And there's a third one I'm returning to right now. The work that I'd been doing with Perry Chase, or rather she teaches, and I'm trying to absorb, I'm trying to learn from this method of doing business, magic-led business. In particular, the main access point I have for this is her program Spark. It has a very specific feeling to it. So working on embodying that, it's not something I so much carry as I let transform me. As I feel into it, as I rewatch some of the videos, like Mage wants to be a program. It really wants to be a program. And there's this, like, how to hold the frequency and let that come through, but not push, but not get in the way going, why am I pushing? Instead, just getting out of the way and letting it act. A lot of the letting it act is it working me. So I'm making my senses more refined. I'm feeling the texture of the multiple worlds. I am watching my own mind reshape. And today, in particular, bumped into something that I can't tell whether it's part of Mage, but it's definitely in the purview of its reach, in the sense of like cartographers can't describe how like map makers should not be describing how traffic flow should work, but they can certainly see how traffic flow is working. There's something like that going on here. Mage is acting a bit like a kind of celestial cartography, a sense of being able to reach into all of the layers of existence and feel them clearly and work with them and feel what control and power actually is, where choice is, and how choice rings. But there's this point that I started to rub into. Um, I'm just like, oh, this is a pain point. I can't even open it up right now. It's not like heart bleeding. It's like, oh, this is an access point to the heart. I'm going to turn into a blubbering mess sometime soon. All right. Which is a recognition of how I relate to desire and how it feels very threatening for me to speak desire and to own it, to embody the want. And because of that, sort of a knot that's been created with want and craving being hard for me to distinguish. The eternal brings in the space. This, not that. These are different. The mage is bringing in the element of feeling how their separateness can be unwoven, and how to relate and be transformed deeply by desire and to dissolve the craving. You're going to feel all of that, and there's an activity in my own body of being that energy more and more, letting that through and letting it in. So I imagine that in the coming, wow, it's like 16 episodes of this series before it's done. Just 16 left, just 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks. That's quite stunning, actually. This feels like there's a fixture in my life at this point. It's like a third of a year to do this. So feeling all of that and noticing how Mage wants to be a program, wants to be something that I can serve, not just serve the energy to people, but rather notice the way in which this energy wants to reach and work with the resonant frequencies in other people. Create a container where this kind of transformation happens, where something that can fairly be called alchemy can be seen as alchemy, something of what is it to intend to do something and have that intention transmit into a transformation in the world. How does manifestation work? How do we work through emotions? These are things that we can talk about with theories, and we can try to practice different theories, but there's a direct sensory experience, transsensory, like how we develop senses in the first place. There's something about feeling the texture of reality itself as we become more familiar with it. All of these pieces make so much more sense. There's clarity. Unshakable clarity. And the process of allowing that through has kind of guidelines. It feels a little bit almost like bumper rails on bowling. And that's what Spark is about. It's like feeling the frequency of Spark and allowing that to shape how I orient to Mage. Although Mage is telling me how to orient to it, as is the Eternal. So all three of these are interacting. The Eternal isn't something that I teach, it's more something that I embody more and more deeply, more and more often. In fact, there was a couple of days ago, there was a yet another energy that suddenly came through, suddenly vividly presented itself to me. Different program than Mage. Definitely anchored in the eternal, there's no question. I am not ready to teach that one. I am not ready to present it. It's going to take a while. there's a lot of digestion to happen. My body is not yet tuned, which is, feels a little strange to say that, but it's very true. My body isn't vital enough yet. It'll get there. And it's challenging. That one came through with a clear name. That one is immortal. And I am definitely the vessel for that to come through. You're just not going to find somebody who's more, like, you're not going to find a mortal who is more a manifestation of immortality than me. A lot of pride in that, but also just truth. And there's something straightforward about that. But that's its own thing. That's, I'm not even focusing on that. It just comes knocking every now and then, and emphasis on knock, like it bowls me over. And then I guess there are two others. So there's these three, the three main ones: the Eternal, Mage, Spark. I have a little trouble nailing Spark. It's not mine. It's something I'm learning from. It's on the outside coming in. That's at least my lived experience of it so far. And then there are two others showing up because these are also received. One is Perry's men's program with her husband, Kellen. I'm still feeling into how to soak in that frequency. It's a little tricky for me. I'm sort of wanting to reach in, but it's I'm having trouble feeling it in detail. And then there's a fifth one that's shown up. I talked about this, I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago, a day or two ago, when I started talking about, oh yeah, I applied for this program. Now, just having applied for this program, all this stuff is up for me. It's giving me sort of a, so the name of that one is Bankroll by Stefania Maria. That, I don't know whether, I still can't tell whether it makes sense for me to reach into that. Like, this is a lot of frequencies for me to be working. And this one is doing its own thing too, just from having explored it, seeing one video and going, this is dealing with this particular energetic quirkiness in my subtle body and in my causal relationship to my subtle body. I'm using these terms pretty precisely. There's a specific map of the soul, that, or the soul, a map of the human, a map of experiential layers that I use implicitly in the background. I think I've given a couple of times here. The physical level, the body, the subtle level where mind, emotions, vibes happen, and the causal level where intention happens, where the sense of there being an observer who is watching from behind the eyes. I also can sort of sense that's where compassion comes from, where compassion acts. It's much, much subtler than even the way in which we're touched by music, or the way in which a sunset strikes us as beautiful, or when something horrifies us. All of that is happening at a fairly dense level compared to the level of where exactly am I coming from? What am I choosing right now? So that's what I'm referring to. So there's something that I'm just talking with Stefania and seeing one of her videos. There's like this boot up of, oh, there's this structure in my subtle layer, and I can see my causal relationship to it. And yeah, that's a mess, and washing in this frequency would help with that. And a sense of what brought me to even looking at that, like, it is tricky for me to feel into it with all of this energy happening. So a lot of where I'm finding myself stretched is holding all of these frequencies. I'm not responsible for the frequencies that are coming in, the Spark for Holder, the men's program, or for Bankroll. Those are not mine to hold. but there is something about choosing to open and be influenced by them and digesting them and doing the work that I need in order to let their impacts wash through my system. All of this, that's my mind. So this electricity I'm feeling, this activity, this action, and this is related to a way in which I've been on the verge of frying a number of times. I've had to do some things that were intentionally numbing and mindless in order to allow my system room to breathe. Leaning a little bit more into, okay, well, let's keep expanding. Let's keep being with more sensation. There's something like two-ish strengths correspond to, loosely speaking, the masculine and feminine work, which, yes, I'll go so far as to say that this correlates with what is predominantly men's work and women's work, but everybody needs to do both. It's just that the way that the sexual roles tend to play out, there is some tendency for there to be a leaning in importance in one way or the other. But the masculine work being building the capacity to be with intensity. Can I stay with all of the charge? Can I hold? Can I be still in it? I'm going to build more and more intensity intentionally, encounter it. Pain is weakness leaving the body. There's a fake version of this, the one that in practice we end up using to mimic, we as human beings. But this is very apparent in a lot of the male population, the tendency to lean in that direction by numbing out. Pain is weakness leaving the body, then let me just dissociate from the pain so that I can just make weakness leave the body without me being involved. That's the opposite. That's avoiding being with intensity. The intensity is over here and I'm back here focused on an idea or focused on, yeah, I'm going to get through this thing. Okay, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. Instead of, wow, this hurts. Being with the wow. So that's the masculine side. And the feminine side is opening, relaxing, surrendering, becoming more sensitive. Literally, like I've been working on in my morning qigong, having, like, as I kick my leg out, to slow it down so that I can feel every inch of the movement, and then moving my foot in little detailed movements. I can do these kind of fine movements with my fingers and my hands. I can't do them with my feet, not because the musculature isn't there, but because I have not cultivated the relationship of sensitivity and refinement so that I can feel my feet in enormous detail. The same thing with feeling my emotions. How much of my emotions can I feel? How much space can I create? And how much room can there be? How open can I be? Rest, recuperation, delight, ease, pleasure. So both of these are necessary. They're both absolutely vital. And getting to see that, well, if you build up either one enough, it can sort of, so that isn't quite what I wanted to say, as I'm getting in mind. When I feel a strong emotional surge, the capacity to open is what allows there to be room for that surge to happen. And the capacity to be with the intensity of the surge is what allows it to not overwhelm me. If either of these are too low, then I have this energy blasting out of the container and I'm trying to get away from it. And that's what a trigger is. That's what it means to be flooded, to be overwhelmed. So building the capacity to be with more and more and more intense sensations, more powerful sensations over time. So a combination of both. Can I stay with it even when it feels overwhelming? And also, can I make what is required in order for me to even approach overwhelm be larger? Can there be room? And I'm feeling in holding like 2 frequencies that are clearly mine and a third that kind of comes in and knocks me around, and then 3 others that are in my life right now and that are wanting to work me. That's quite a lot. It's a lot of frequencies for me. And I'm going to have to choose pretty soon. Do I want that 5th one? So there's a lot of electricity, and I can feel my capacity for both of these sides expanding, my capacity to relax, open, diminish the intensity of the charge, and also to just stay with it. Stay with it. So, um, this this is subtle bodybuilding. This is appropriately enough, it's part of mage work, part of holding the mage frequency. It sort of slips in bits and pieces, but that's actually part of the point. There's this leaning into, all right, building this capacity, the size and detail of the subtle body. And the clarity of it. So I'm certainly not perfect at any of these, even the ones that, even for mage where I'm looking at putting forward a program, this isn't a matter of me being a perfect manifestation of it. It's a matter of it working through me and me being involved in that, me being involved in the process of holding the container for that frequency to do its work. I'm feeling enormous tingles throughout my whole body. I'm feeling all of that and being ready for it, getting ready for it. And over about the last week, each evening, I reach a point where I've hit my capacity and I've just, it's a lot. It is a lot right now. Wait a week, and I'll just be untriggerable on a whole range of things that used to drive me crazy. And that'll be nice. Okay, I think that's it. Thanks for your time and attention.